My name is Matt Pullen. I work here on the product marketing team for Jamf. Previously, I was an educator for over 20 years and have also supported schools as an education consultant, helping them really think about how they're deploying the technology into their schools to get the most out of what they're doing. And that's the basis for today's webinar: how we can transform learning and accelerate an iPad one-to-one program. And this is a really topical subject because as we start to think about the use of technology in classrooms, how can we think about what differences we can make with the technology when we think differently about what the technology is actually aimed at doing? Let's take a quick look at our agenda then. First, we'll take a look at how we can think about inclusive and effective one-to-one iPad deployments when we think about the diverse needs of the individuals that will be using those devices. Then, we'll take a look at how we can enhance that classroom management and build on teacher confidence, a critical step in making sure that all students get access to the technology because all teachers feel confident to use it in their classrooms. And then we'll think about how we can create our unique deployments, thinking about how technology can make a greater impact in the classroom when we think differently about the tools that we're going to deploy into those classrooms. And finally, we thought it would be useful to demonstrate our classroom applications that Jamf offer that really do bring equity to teachers' confidence and classroom routines. Let's get started. First of all, let's think about meeting the needs of a diverse workforce. Transformation in schools only really occurs when all the stakeholders are united in a single goal. Only then can you efficiently focus on building a curriculum that utilizes technology as a tool to personalize that learning experience for all students. Curriculum leaders building out curriculum need to trust that the technology will be used if they're going to build it into curriculum planning. And technology will only be used when we meet those individual stakeholders' needs. Let's start with our teachers. As we look to find the purpose behind any deployment, understanding the unique and diverse needs of all stakeholders or end users is going to be essential. Key elements that impact on technology use in classrooms come directly from the additional impact on time and resources it can bring to educators. Even if this is only a perception, that perception could be a major barrier to engagement. Finding the purpose for educators often starts with their key belief that they have no time to be innovative in classrooms and that the introduction of technology takes more time. Showcasing how we can meet that need with technology, that using technology in an efficient and focused way will actually lead to time savings, is a critical step in making sure all teachers get on board with a project. And having all teachers on board is essential in accelerating a program to one-to-one. As without the teachers using the tech, the curriculum cannot be focused on the benefits tech brings to students in the classroom. We can see here just some statistics from a couple of studies that we've been able to either do with our customers or looking at some total economic impact studies from Apple themselves. Time saving in terms of lesson preparation or support for teacher turnover and keeping teachers in the role is critical. And where schools have used iPad effectively, we can see that it helps with their planning. It reduces the time it takes to plan lessons or supports teachers in feeling excited about their role, therefore keeping them in their jobs. These are critical elements to build on in any school because high teacher turnover means resetting all the time and having to think about building up teacher confidence. When we have happy teachers in their roles and they feel confident that their time is being used effectively, it makes a huge difference in that class. And although convincing students isn't as difficult as convincing educators, they'll still want to know the long-term impact of using technology, so it doesn't just become a fad as part of an ever-changing world that they live in. They also play a big part in supporting a wider understanding of the role of technology in their learning, especially in a one-to-one rollout. As when devices are used beyond the classroom, the impact should be positive and not lead to questions around screen time, etc. where iPads have been used effectively as part of learning and teaching strategies and focused on specific purposes within a student's learning journey, the impact is shown in how students see an impact on their own outcomes. And again, we can see here that students are really identifying where their work has been improved and where they can find additional help with learning. One thing that iPad definitely brings to students all over the world is that ability to be able to source information for themselves, to be able to work that little bit more independently because they have a tool that can help with those things. And they can access learning in different ways. When we think about creative teaching and learning, often we think about the teachers having to do an awful lot more. But actually, at times, students are able to extend on what they're learning in the classroom through the tools that enable them to find out more information. And that's when learning really starts to stick. And finally, but definitely a key element to accelerating any rollout, is the view of the parents. Views amongst parents can have a major role in determining a technology deployment. Often technology is misunderstood in its use in a classroom based on the media portrayal of technology or the understanding of how technology is used in social time. Ensuring parents are part of the discussion and journey will lead to a better support for an accelerated programme, as well as developing new opportunities for parental engagement in the impact of technology on learning outcomes. It's critical at these stages to involve parents in the decision making around the type of technology that might be used and the understanding of how it's going to be used within the classroom, so parents can see that iPads are there to help their child and not another tool that can take a distraction away from what they should be focusing on in school. And with budgets in education under increasing strain, understanding that adding more devices to a school doesn't necessarily create more work for whoever is in control of managing the devices is part of the solution. Apple device management typically takes less person hours than managing non-Apple devices, meaning increasing that device footprint doesn't impact on the need for increasing staffing or time. The choice of your MDM is very important in this workflow because you need to consider all of these personas' needs as you work through that journey to successful deployments. And the choice of device plays a huge role in the impact they have on education as well. The perception of value is more than just an upfront cost. Devices that are used effectively bring more value than something that doesn't have an impact in the classroom, so therefore is rarely used. We talk about this internally at Jamf as the well-managed box. The device that's been really well set up by IT, but doesn't have that necessary use case to go into the classroom to be used effectively for teaching and learning. IT have done their job perfectly well, but they've missed that opportunity to engage teachers to do more with what they actually have. So when we look at the needs of these various stakeholders, finding that unique purpose that means that the shared goal can be met is key. When you fully understand the needs of these different stakeholders, you then build a solution that meets that ultimate purpose. And technology has changed in terms of its focus within the classroom rapidly over recent years, but has been on an ever-increasing shift for a long time. Traditionally, IT skills were taught within IT curriculums. That traditional approach of developing productivity tools, word processing, presentations, etc., possible the access to the internet and how we can utilize that, or how computer systems even work, were taught in IT classrooms. But the learning focus of technology has rapidly changed. Now we see that technology can be used to aid learning. The accessibility tools that don't just meet the needs of the smaller percentage that may have a diagnosed issue, but the wider accessibility tools that can support any student at any time. The alternative ways that they can access content, be that through video, text to speech, speech to text, or ways that meet their individual needs given the circumstances they're in, the year groups that they're in, or any special educational needs that they might have. And that then starts to impact on teachers' learning design. We talk about personalised learning, but often teachers fear that that means we have to do personalised teaching. And that's where this myth of workload increase comes when we talk about personalisation. But actually, personalised learning should focus on the learning aspect. And that's where students have the opportunity to do things that are a little bit more focused to them, with an opportunity to do things that meet their needs. That way, teachers design a lesson, but give opportunities through technology for students to perhaps access these in different ways. And we also have the opportunity with Apple devices, specifically the iPad, to be more mobile in our learning. We're not talking here about having a device that you can move to a desk, to a different desk. We're talking about a device that can be used in a mobile way. So while students are actually out and about and exploring the world around them, they can use the device to actually capture information, record their voice, and do lots of things because it's set up to be a mobile learning tool. These are critical things to explore as you start to think about what we're using technology for in the classroom. Because when we start to think differently about what we're doing with technology, we get different outcomes on what that's going to do for our students. And let's take a look at understanding people and purpose in a little bit more detail. If you're an IT admin, you know that you need to set up those devices, manage inventory, update the device and apps and all of those things that need to be done to make sure those devices stay compliant. But we also need to think about the way the devices are going to be used once IT have them set up. Typically, the curriculum leaders will want to know that do these devices meet the needs of the curriculum? It's not just about having access to a keyboard and a screen and maybe the internet. It's what is it actually doing to help us engage students with the learning, engage with the curriculum, and do things that they might not have had access to before. That's not always possible through just having a keyboard, because it might be restrictive to having students go outside and explore the world around them and make connections with the world with the learning that they're doing. Next, educators primarily will think about, does this make my life easier? That's not to undermine what teachers do, but as we said, with rising workloads, they're going to be conscious of making sure that this doesn't take away their focus from teaching in the classroom. So does that device in the classroom support them with the things they need to do? It could be as simple as photocopying information and how the iPad could speed up that process. Or it could be in terms of feedback and assessment. Does using my voice enable me to do feedback quicker and easier and actually have more impact on students in the long run as well? And finally, if those devices do go home, do we give parents and carers support to be able to manage them in their own home spaces? Because it's critical here that we don't cause issues with learning devices when they enter the home, because they need to meet the parents and carers' own home life rules and expectations on how devices might be used. Are we providing them with tools to be able to restrict what the device can do when they need it to be restricted? At Jamf, we look at purposeful deployment as a journey to successful and integrated deployment with Apple technology, going beyond the management and security of those devices that often just belongs to the IT admin, to ensure that all of those stakeholders are considered in that journey, that management continues into the classroom through empowerment of the educators, so that IT admins are a part of the full journey of the device, without having to do more work managing all of the devices. With a focus on the purpose behind the initial choice of device, understanding the outcomes you're looking for is vital. In an accelerated deployment, the focus should be on the ultimate purpose of meeting learners' needs. Every user having access to a personalised device that is private and secure and empowers students to succeed is essential. Let's take a look at how Jamf supports the classroom use of iPad as well. Now, once that initial management of device has been put into place, ensuring that classroom devices have the required settings, profiles, students are assigned to the correct groups, the role of managing devices for education use can be passed over to the end user themselves. With Jamf Teacher and Apple Classroom, educators gain more granular control over what students have access to on their devices and to support that classroom use. Jamf Student gives specific tools to students for communication and updating of their own devices. And Jamf Parent extends the role of devices beyond the classroom by providing parents and carers with tools to help focus the use of school-owned devices when at home. And Jamf also extends those solutions for classrooms with specific integrations to key workflows that support all areas of the learning experience, from marking and feedback to support for assignment distribution applications and handwriting and maths, even simplifying the use of classroom digital signage and the setup and management of tools and Apple TV. Finally, we wrap all of those elements up with layers of security that ensure that wherever learning takes place, both the students and networks are protected from malicious or inappropriate content or attacks. Let's look at this in a slightly different way. Jamf solutions go further than the products with integrations to wider solutions to meet your purpose. Not simply as deployment and management of the apps, but with configurations that save time and further empower educators to see the tool in its role of supporting learning. Here we can see different stages of education or different sizes of deployment, and where we manage and secure those devices with Jamf, we engage and empower with Jamf tools as well as those wider integrations to applications that you'll find within Apple's education ecosystem. These tools enable you to finely tune the bespoke deployment that you want to create, meaning you're not just using the tools that are provided by technology, you're hand-picking the tools that meet specifically the needs of your students, teachers, and wider staff needs. And whilst we take a look at teacher needs, developing equity and teacher confidence is absolutely critical. And with that, we'd love to show you a demo of what Jamf Teacher can do to make sure teacher confidence is met. On the screen here, you'll see two devices, the teacher screen on the left and the student screen set up on the right. The student device has been set up with lots of applications, primarily focused on teaching and learning. There's some there that may be for social use outside of school time if that device is going home. But even in a classroom situation where a device is set up with lots of teaching and learning tools, all of these tools are not necessarily going to be appropriate for any given lesson and could form an additional distraction to students or teachers when we're setting up our lessons. So I'm going to jump into Jamf Teacher, and I've got some lessons already set up here. Let's jump into my art lesson, for example. You'll see here that I have the option to be able to allow different websites, allow apps, or set restrictions on that device. Let's start with allowing specific apps. I can tap on the plus, choose a length of time I want this to be. Typically it would be the length of the lesson, but you could extend this or reduce this to meet your specific needs. I then choose applications that I want to be used as part of the learning focus. So I'm just going to choose a few applications on here that I know are going to be useful in terms of the lesson that we're doing, and make sure that I remove any applications or don't allow any applications that might cause a distraction. Now I've got those in place, I simply tap apply, and that sends the message across to the student device and instantly removes any of those applications that may be a distraction. Now this is happening in real time, and I can show you that the timer on the screen shows exactly how long I've got that restriction for, but equally I can add or remove additional applications throughout that lesson should I need to. If I want to remove all of those restrictions in one go, I can just tap on clear limitations and it will bring back all of the applications, ready for that student to go on to their next lesson potentially, where the next teacher will put their own restrictions on the device. Now the same applies within allowed websites. This is content filtering from a classroom level. Here what I'm asking for is to have focused use of the website to enable students to go onto the internet without having to search through the millions and billions of websites that they might be able to access, to be focused on the learning ones that I want them to look at as part of the learning sequence. You'll see here I can upload websites from a CSV file. I've got one already created here with some science websites. Tap open, And that's going to pre-populate the websites that I think are going to be useful for my child or student in the class to access. When I tap apply, that's going to set that web restriction onto the device, open them into Safari, and meaning they can only access those websites that I've given them access to. Now again, I can add additional apps if I want them to do more than just look on the internet, which most lessons you would do, and I can add or remove any websites as well. Again, choosing clear all restrictions takes that device back to its full use case. Finally, restrictions, again, gives me the opportunity to restrict device functionality. Now here you'll see things like the camera are listed. This isn't just access to the camera, this is the function of the camera on the device in general. So where the device has an app where the camera can be used within it, by switching the function off here means that function is switched off in any application. You'll also see some other fantastic tools here for teaching and learning. Being able to turn on or off spell check and autocorrect is great for literacy lessons where spelling may be the actual focus of a lesson and you don't want the device to be doing some of the heavy lifting for you. And then also the great tools from Apple in terms of our Apple Intelligence with writing tools and Image Playground. Sometimes they'll have a great purpose in a classroom, but sometimes teachers might want to restrict that. Now that doesn't need to be done at a school level because now teachers can choose when and if they want those tools to be on the device or not on the device. And if all of that might seem a little bit too complicated for teachers still to use because of all the things they have to do within a lesson, we also have lesson templates, which makes the whole process really simple. Take this creative literacy lesson, for example. I already have the websites listed, the allowed apps, and the restrictions in place. So when we talk about curriculum planning, our curriculum planners could create these lesson templates and share them to their teachers that teach those subjects, meaning the teachers simply just have to start, choose the length of time in their class, and tap apply. 3 taps later, that device is set up for exactly what the student wants to use it for, with nothing else. The websites have been deployed onto that device, and Safari is set up for them to only be able to access those applications and websites that the teacher wants them to access. Now that's just a really quick overview of what Jamf Teacher can do, but it really is focused on making sure that students are not distracted from anything on that device and the device is used as a focus tool throughout learning. Now we've built up that teacher confidence, we can start to have a look at how the iPad can be used to really transform learning and teaching, giving them opportunities to think differently about how they present information to students in the first place, or provide students with other opportunities for themselves to go deeper with their learning. Let's start here in Notes, a great application to just replicate that classroom experience with a whiteboard. But instead of having to have my back to the students whilst I'm teaching, I can now teach from anywhere, displaying my device onto the screen so students can see what I'm doing. Let's look at a couple of things that really enhance that experience as well. First of all, I could write directly onto the page, but I can also use the ability of dictation to add the notes directly onto the screen. Great for teachers to use, but also great for students to access learning in different ways. By simply tapping on the dictation button, enabling dictation, I can now speak directly onto the page and it's going to write the words out for me. Now this is really simple and easy. And the other thing is, I don't just need to rely on speech to text. I can also select this text and you can see I have the opportunities in here to have this text read back to me or translated. There's so many opportunities with this device to be able to do things that you possibly could not do before. That simple translation opens opportunities for students to be able to take learning in lots of new directions. And this is only in Notes. This actually works across all of the elements on the device. Now also, whilst I'm presenting from the front, I might want to draw directly onto the screen. And sometimes, let's say it's a maths lesson, I might be drawing shapes on here. Having the ability to have those shapes lock in for me really helps students understand that if I'm talking about a square, it actually looks like a square and not something which doesn't actually represent all those things. These are minor things in terms of how we think, but to a student who's learning new information, it's really important to understand that what the teacher's talking about is actually what it should look like. So that's just in Notes. Let's take a look at Safari. In Safari, if I'm presenting, there's lots of great information on the internet, but there's also lots of distractions, and we've talked about the need to limit those distractions for students. Within Safari here, I can tap on the bar at the top and hide distracting items. I can now choose things on the page that I think actually don't lend themselves to any support for the students and actually could be a distraction whilst the teacher's talking through them. You can just continue to add any of those elements that you want to remove, tap hide, and it just magically disappears them. Now that web page doesn't have distractions. Again, from a student's point of view that might struggle with attention, this just keeps them focused at all times. And at any point, you can simply cancel those things. Page comes back to full view. From a student point of view, we can go even further. Let's jump into one of these stories. And again, we might see that there's lots of distractions on this page. We don't necessarily want all of these distractions. So tapping on the top, we can start removing those distractions. We can also then start to think about viewing this page in a slightly different way. Let's go into Reader View here, and you'll see that this strips it right down to just the focus of that web page. No adverts or things that might take students' attention elsewhere. If I tap again, I can also increase the font of the page. Helpful if I'm presenting from the front of the class, but equally if students have that additional need. I can also change the background colours and even the font. So I'm now really personalising that experience for myself as the teacher, but also the experience for those students. And whilst we just finish off with a couple of these things, let's look at the accessibility tools that are available on the device. Simple things for all students to be able to engage with to make that device work personally for them. In lots of cases, schools pay extra for some of these accessibility tools, but they're built directly into this iPad that can go with me wherever I need to be. Let's just take a look, example, for the display and text size. I can make that text size bigger or smaller, really supporting students that might struggle with vision. But equally, any students that might need colour filters on their display easily have that built into the device. Now, this makes it personalised and also personal to that student, because I don't need to have those acetate sheets to cover over screens. It's built into the device. Now, this is personalised, so therefore, as I click this on, you won't see the changes. But just see here that I can change this based on any colour blindness or any additional needs that I might have, and I can make it really bespoke. Once that's in place, that's on the device regardless of the application that I'm in, making sure that students can just do what they need to do on their device. Now, there are so many other things that you can do with an iPad, from using it as a visualizer to be able to scan text in a room and bring that text out to be able to translate it, making those analog resources digital in a really, really quick and easy way. When you combine this with Jamf Teacher and that building of teacher confidence, you can do so much more with iPad, whether you're a student or that teacher. So when we think about this, let's just leave you with one question. What are the purposes that you're trying to meet as an institution? How can the things that we've shown you today support IT in their distribution of devices and minimise the things that might cause them problems? If you're an educator, how does this support you in developing curriculum and thinking about how devices can be used more effectively in the classroom? And if you're a teacher or IT admin with children of yourselves, how does Jamf Parent support you with thinking about when that device comes home, how you can restrict it down to make sure that there's no distractions in the home as well? Now, you can find out more about Jamf Teacher and other Jamf education tools at Jamf Educator. This is a website that's put together to both support teachers in developing their own confidence through learning opportunities and some way to get you a badge at the end of the day as well, because we know educators always love a badge. So there is a simulated section that will take you through how Jamf Teacher works without IT having to set these things up. If you're in IT, it's a great way to get people to see things without you having to do lots of the legwork behind. There is also a grow and share section. The grow section gives you more access to Jamf resources around education, and the share section helps integrate you into our wider Jamf Nation community, where you'll find out more information about things you can do. We love our Jamf Nation. over 100,000 Apple IT-focused individuals who learn from each other every day, discussing best practices and how to do so much more with the technology. You can create a free account and join in the discussion. And we also have our marketplace. We talked about some of those integrations earlier on in the session, critical things that can really support you in developing that unique deployment to meet your unique goals. Thank you so much for joining the session. I hope you found it insightful and learned some useful information that can help you with your deployment or your refresh journey with Apple and Jamf.